So I won't take up too much time here, but I want to give everyone a bit of an understanding and an overview as to who PredictX is, what space we're in, and some of the challenges that our clients have and how we are using Actian's products to help solve those. So let me give a little bit of a high-level overview first from a large corporate standpoint. So a lot of our clients are large corporate organizations, and fundamentally large corporates have four key areas where they are spending money. And one of the interesting areas here is what we term employee-generated spend. And employee-generated spend has a big swathe of different functions that can come into play here. And the challenges that are persistent within this space is really where we are able to leverage some of Actian's products and some of the ways that we bring together data and use that data to help our clients understand this space. Now, I would imagine that for you guys, a lot of the areas that you see on the screen here are very familiar, very relevant. And one of the big differences with EGS, or employee-generated spend, is that rather than with some of the other areas where there is, say, for example, with procurement, quite a lot of control and governance around how that spend is generated, what happens, what causes that spend. There's a big difference with EGS, and that's where actually the spend is controlled and generated by the employees. The employees are making those decisions as to what they're spending, where they're spending it. And as a result of that, they don't necessarily have the same understanding that some of the corporate procurement departments would do in the way that spend is audited and controlled. Some of the context there is that the organizations want to give their employees choice. Choice is obviously a good thing. But what that leads to is a data problem and a data challenge around the fact that a lot of that information is very fragmented. If you think back to what I had on the screen a couple of seconds ago with respect to the different data sources, you've got employees who are spending money on their corporate cards. You've got employees who are putting expenses through the expense system. These are just two examples of where there is a huge amount of money, a huge amount of spend that's going through these systems that has often very little control from a governance standpoint. And this becomes a challenge for those organizations because they are unable to have a clear picture of that spend. They are unable to have a picture of what's happening there. But also it means that the ability for them to source successfully, to manage the way that spend is audited is really challenging. So this is where PredictX comes in, and our role and what we provide to our clients is really around how, given the organization the ability to really understand what that looks like and what that picture is. And these are just some of the examples of where the real opportunity starts to come into play for these organizations. So if we take, for example, sourcing around, let's say around travel management, you've got a huge amount of spend going through, maybe not so much right now, but a huge amount of spend going through different airlines and going through different hotel programs, and the ability for those organizations to really understand what that looks like, and therefore to be able to leverage from the suppliers, from the providers of the services, the best deals, is really important. It's really important to have an understanding of what that spend looks like and where it's coming from and who is doing that. And this is actually prevalent across a huge swathe of the organisations. And I'm just going to touch quickly here on the engagement piece, because while the other areas are really important, one of the challenges that we find again and again from our clients is that the ability for them to engage with their stakeholders, engage with their employees, is hugely important in actually being able to make a difference to the way that they can change behaviour. And one of the key factors there is the importance of being able to flow that data from all those disparate sources into a mechanism to enable them to really get to the bottom of what that picture looks like and how they can then engage the business. And that's really where our product comes to play. So we are, as I touched upon earlier, we're using the Actian products to help us manage and persist and store that data, but then we're also using that from a reporting data source. So that's very much feeding directly into the reports and the insight that our end clients use on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm not going to spend too long here, other than to say that as I touched upon there, the key, and it's some proprietary software that we've built, the key piece behind all of that data management, because fundamentally when you've got that disparate data, you need to be able to manage it, is Pilot. And that's where the key interaction point for us is with the Actian product. So we've been a client of Actian now for about 9 years, and over that time frame has been using their Vector on-premise product. What we've been doing more recently over the last 6 months or so is migrating to Avalanche, their cloud product. And I'll let the guys here talk a little bit more about Actian and the products themselves before coming back and talking a little bit about how that migration's worked and what we've done there.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so Actian Avalanche, it's a cloud data managed warehouse service. Now, there are many of those out there on the market at the moment, but we try to make ourselves in that little bit of a unique space that we're trying to replace your on-premise cloud data warehouse, your on-premise data warehouse with a cloud data warehouse. And in that sense, if you're on-premise, you're going to be running that data center 24/7. So when it goes to the cloud, your return on investment could be better if you only use it and have it running when you need it. So what do? We took our 30 years of experience, 30 plus years of experience. I have to put in there that I've been there about 22 years, man and boy, as it were. The products that we've had out there have been used in mission-critical environments. They're used by government, they're used by utilities, financial institutions, and retail. So we're across all verticals. It allows you to get some insight as to what we do and where we are. Taking this step forward, if we can move on, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Colin. He's one of our solutions engineers, to take you through a few more elements in a little bit more detail. Colin.
Hi, thank you, Keith. So yes, we've had, I'm going to actually start at the bottom of this slide. So we have got a product, Avalanche. It's a multi-MPP columnar database designed for extreme high performance and low total cost of ownership. Okay, so I'm not going to make too many inflammatory statements here, but we believe we've got one of the fastest products on the market. And if we're talking about cloud, that means we can turn the speed and performance into cost savings. So if you can complete your workloads faster, then that means we don't need to do utilities. We can use our product to effectively wind down the compute and save an enormous amount of money. So you're not having a large investment in on-prem a kit which is actually sitting there idle for most of the time. So as Keith has alluded to, our products have actually developed over many years. A lot of it from the OLTP background. We used to have a product called Ingress that you may have heard of in the past. But fundamentally, our products are designed for very high amounts of concurrency. So in today's market, where we're looking to democratize data, we've seen it with a lot of our competitors. They also have very similar paradigms, very similar high-performance cloud solutions, but they don't necessarily consider what actually happens once you start democratizing that data and start pushing it out to your organization. Does their technology scale for hundreds of users, thousands of users? In some cases it doesn't, or even if it does, it comes at a very high cost. Okay, so I'm not going to mention names of competitors, but we probably know a number of them that as soon as you start increasing the number of users, your costs are going up. So you're being penalized for your success, really, in terms of your data transformation technology. We've also got, our technology is hybrid, which we're going to see in a minute. So we have the same code base, the same solution that we can employ on-prem and also on cloud and on any cloud. So we can deploy through to AWS, we can deploy through to Azure, as well as Google, all through our own portal. You can have a mixture. You don't necessarily have to have one particular cloud solution. Okay. We provide a fully managed service on that. So we split the deployment into a control plane and into a data plane. So we manage the control plane. So we manage all of your solution. We keep the lights on, as it were, and manage all the upgrades, backups, etc. But then the user is in complete control of the data. In fact, we can't touch the data for obvious security reasons. So next slide. Okay, what we're trying to achieve with this this image here is we decided that we should also include within our database data warehouse product the ability to get data in and out of the system. So data integration is often on people's shopping list as soon as people start looking at the cloud. And if you've done any work in terms of migration to the cloud, you'll know that data pipelines, data engineering, from that point of view, is a big challenge, okay, in terms of being able to do that. So again, we've been around for a long time. We have some very mature data integration tools, and the one that we've bundled into the product at no extra cost, so you're automatically licensed and enabled to use all of these features, is a product that's evolved from a product we got called Data Connect. Now that product can basically handle any type of workload, change data capture, streaming data, event data, batch data. It's very much driven as a low-code, no-code type of solution, typical Canvas type API. You're probably familiar with a number of other products that look very, very similar. Okay, but in this particular case, we provide all of that technology within the license for Avalanche. We also include the ability to use all of our own proprietary connectors, and that's another big cost base for people. So typically, you may employ an integration solution. You're penalized for necessarily adding more data sources or targets, where you end up having to pay more money for the connectors for those additional targets. Whereas we have targets for, and I safely say this, everything. We have drivers for everything. And if we don't, then we'll develop them, okay, if you need them. So we have a very large ecosystem that use the individual product, Data Connect. We've now combined that into Avalanche, so you get all of that. Latest updates to that is we've also included data quality into the product as well. So we found, and I do a lot of work with data, it's unfortunately horrible stuff. It never fits, it's always wrong, and it just completely messes up my models and everything. So yeah, it's just fantastic that I can now put a layer of data quality ahead of all of my engineering pipelines, all embedded within the same product. And again, I don't have to go elsewhere or find some more software or some more licenses in order to be able to do that. So very much out of the box now, we've got nearly a complete IT infrastructure system. We believe it's the cheapest on the market, and we'd very much encourage people to try it out. So just with that, I'm going to hand back to Andrew, who's going to explain how we managed to convert his on-prem system, which is the same version of Avalanche, from Vector to Avalanche in the cloud.
Perfect, thanks for that. So let me give a little bit of context as to the background here and how this has come about. So I touched upon the fact earlier that we've been a client of Actian for about 9 years now, and we've over that time frame had their on-prem deployment called Vector, and that's been really, really good for us. Like we've had a huge amount of value from that product, and it's helped to deliver a lot of what we've talked about in the first half of this session today. About 6 months ago, we started the conversation with the guys here about how can we look at a hybrid type deployment where we utilize Avalanche within GCP alongside Vector on our on-prem setup. So we wanted to, for a new client, to migrate and to bring the service that we're providing today to the cloud. And this came with potentially a couple of complexities, but one of which was the fact that we've got within our on-prem database a huge amount of master data that we reference for our clients on a day-by-day basis. But alongside that, obviously, we've got a number of workflows and management routines and so on that are all driven through Vector in an on-prem setting. And we were looking to bring this into the cloud, but to utilize the data and the workflows and the setup that we had across both environments. And actually, what we've found is that's been really smooth and very efficient in terms of the way that we've been able to bring that to bear. We're currently in a UAT phase, bearing in mind that we started in about April-May time completely from fresh. and that's getting to the point where actually we're deploying the product in a GCP environment that's running today very successfully, utilizing both a combination of the workflows that we developed all for our on-prem setup over the last few years, but have worked pretty much out of the box within the cloud environment. So that's been extremely successful and has worked very well.
Thank you, Andy. So, what have we learned today? We've got a company called Actian that's got a high-performance cloud data warehouse that is also available on-premise and has been used successfully on-premise by PredictX for the last 9 years. And they are doing what many people are doing at the moment and taking their company forward into the cloud so that they don't actually have to be a data center managing company, because they're not in the business for that. And that affects other companies as well, hopefully like your companies as well. So what I'd like to do now is open the floor to questions. So do we have any questions from the floor? Please wait for the microphone to arrive if you do. Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
This one for PredictX. You had the choice of many vendors. Why did you choose Actian?
Good question. So obviously the answer to that question goes back quite a few years now. When we looked at the options on the table at the time, Actian was very much at the forefront from a vendor standpoint, both in terms of the quality of the product and in terms of the kind of the offering and the support. And actually that's continued. So we've continued to keep an ear to the ground in terms of what else is available in the marketplace, but have never had a reason to move away. It's continued to be the case that actually they've been able to serve very well our needs and our requirements. And I guess from an end client standpoint, one of the key aspects of the product that we provide is the speed that they can make decisions, and actually therefore the importance of the time from, in the case of our product, the data receipt through to the insight delivery. The faster that we can do that, the better ability they have to act upon that, and therefore the speed and performance has always been a key aspect for us, and that's been where we've found unrivaled ability with Actian.
Thank you, Andy. Any further questions?
Behind you. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. David Trott, Diegesis. 2 questions. You talk about connectivity to various data sources. How do you actually connect to those data sources? And, for example, do you use a Data Connect? And the second question is, why did you choose Google Cloud?
Cool, good questions. So let me take the first one first. So data sources, we must have 100 or so different data sources that we connect to, and that varies from kind of standard SFTP file transfers, where that's the easiest way for our clients to provide us information, through to APIs, through to direct database connections. We use a mixture of services to actually bring that data into the Actian databases, be that Avalanche or Vector, and that goes back to the fact that actually some of those products we've developed in-house as proprietary services because of the connections that we have to then some of our internal services as well. So if I give you an example, we've got things like vendor matching algorithms and models that we're using that are part of that ingestion workflow. In respect to your second question around GCP, so we had a bit of history working GCP anyway, which was one of the factors. But actually, from a implementation standpoint, this year it was an obvious choice for us based on some of the factors as well that we wanted to leverage the Google platform rather than some of the other ones on the market, linked to the fact that obviously we've used that previously as well.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Oh, we've got one more question in the back and one on the left. So
Hi,
full
this
of
question
questions
is
today.
for Actian. Like, how is Actian Avalanche licensed?
Actian Avalanche is licensed by compute and by storage. So effectively, a contract was taken out. You agree to a certain amount of compute, which we measure in what we call AUs, Avalanche units, and they start on certainly on the Google side from being able to scale from a 1 AU up to a 64 AU cluster. So from something which you use for development, so that your developers can connect to the same solution that they would do in an enterprise field.
Okay. Thank you.
Just pause while we get the microphone in.
Thank you. Hi. If somebody wanted to take on Avalanche and implement a cloud data warehouse, but they were new, how would you support them? And how would you, if they were like a system integrator or an end user, what sort of programs or support or technical do you have that can enable someone?
Okay. Very good question. Thank you. We have got a professional services team. We've got a sales enablement team. And with the Avalanche cluster, whether it's on Azure or AWS, whichever is your preferred cloud provider, we will support you in getting a proof of value together, a proof of concept, if you want to call it. There is some assistance in that, not just in services and stuff, but also is financially as well, that we'll put up some stake money, the hurt money, as I like to call it. So it's like we're putting some skin in the game to join with you. So if you run ISV, we'll put some partner programs together, which won't just be for the POC, but will be something which is a partner. We're a relationship orientated, I would say, as a company. We're quite dynamic. And if the right company comes along, should we say, that they've got some ideas as to what they need in the product, which we did have with PredictX, and Andy might explain why we had to do that later, that we will modify our roadmap, because we know what it is that, to do to listen. And that's something which not every big organization can actually afford to do. But the scale and size that we're happy to listen to your needs. So, Andy, what did we do for you to get you on the road for Google?
Yeah, good question. So I touched upon earlier that it was a pretty short amount of time that we spent from kind of that initial, yep, let's jump into Avalanche and look to migrate the platform and the products that we had to GCP. And if I think back to kind of some of the early days of that journey, it was very much a collaborative discussion around how do we make sure that the Avalanche product has the relevant features that we need in order to make sure that actually from a migration standpoint it was pretty seamless. And that was, without going into huge amounts of technical detail, that was very much a positive conversation. Like the guys came with very much open ears and were keen to understand the detail behind how we were using Vector and some of the nuances maybe that didn't translate perfectly from an on-prem setup to a cloud-based setup, and on top of that, how we needed to ensure there was a synergy between those two environments. So, as I touched upon earlier, we've got a host of master data that sits within our on-prem environment, rather than having the scenario where we're managing that in multiple places. We wanted to keep that in a simplistic and as straightforward situation as possible. And the guys were very open to how we could do that in a smooth and transparent way. So that was great.
Thank you, Andrew. So, do we have a final question? I think we've got a few more minutes before we need to wrap.
Yeah, hi there. Do you have any governance type features built into the product? Things like kind of lineage and cataloging? Because I guess you've got access to the end-to-end data flow. It would be viable to do that. Or maybe you have integrations with other governance packages.
That is a good question, and it's one which I wasn't expecting. A governance question today. Well, the way that we roll this out, certainly with Avalanche as a managed service, is that we'll make sure that the operating system and the software which is driving behind the database is always patched to the latest level. We communicate out to people like PredictX if they're running their production systems in advance, so that we can actually give them a time when they will maybe have a small outage while we patch the system to add in any security fixes. They're generally for a bug fix. We're part of SOC 2, so we have to make sure that everything is compliant to that, which isn't something which is easy to do, and it's very easy to lose without being able to patch in, I think it's around about 2 weeks to get the cyber security accreditations and not lose them when a security fix patch comes out. So we're very, very proactive. As I say, it's a managed service. You look after your data and we look after the infrastructure for you. And then on that side, we have a 24/7 cloud operations team, and they're monitoring all of the security aspects of the system. Hopefully it's much more secure these days in the cloud than it used to be. And in fact, I think personally, because as far as a cyber attack goes, on-premise systems is down to the DBA, it's down to the operating system of administrator, whether they allow some unencrypted connections, whereas one of the real benefits of being in the cloud is it's guaranteed to be encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest, and all of the processing with the way we do the work is only decrypted when it's actually in the CPU cache. If you want to know more about the CPU cache and encryption, then please visit us at stand 555. I do declare it's far too complicated to discuss in a room with a few people today. So if that is all, I'd just like to summarize and say thank you for coming along and joining with us today. Thank you, Andrew from PredictX. It's been great to have a customer on this session today. It's and the big takeaway is there is Actian, there is Avalanche, and PredictX are here as well. So thank you very much to Colin and Andrew.
Thank you.